Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Birmingham. Whoever you are, whomever you love, wherever you are today, and wherever you are on your spiritual journey, you are welcome here. As always, if you have difficulties with the tech aspect of our virtual church, please contact the church office. We have folks ready and willing to help. To all who are here this morning, welcome home.
If you would like to participate or comment on our service, especially during the Circle of Lights, please use the chat feature in YouTube. We invite you along the way to comment on your participation. You can also tell us when you're lighting your chalice, when you are singing along, and share your joys and concerns when the time comes. We also invite you to send virtual hugs and waves to one another using parentheses around someone's name. After church today, we invite you to our Zoom room for coffee hour, small groups, and meetings. Please continue to watch your email for opportunities to connect with our community during this physical hiatus. And if you are not on our list, please contact the church office. The prelude prepares us for worship. Opening words are by Reverend Renee Ruchowski. It's Gathering of the Waters. It was at a gathering of white women when this gathering of the waters first came to pass. White women in a second wave of gender self-awareness, awakening, connecting, making new meaning, shifting the old ethos. The solidarity of these white women was reflected in the waters each brought. Waters that became a liquid harmony of each sweet voice and intention. Today, we gather as a community of humans in a new wave of gender and racial awareness, awakening, connecting, making new meaning, shifting the old ethos. Today, we seek more than solidarity and harmony. We seek inclusion. We seek mutuality. We seek reconciliation. We seek justice for all people. Today, may our gathering of the waters reflect the gathering of our collective courage in service of the grace and love that is promised by our liberal faith. If you have a chalice with you at home, please light it now and type "lighting the chalice" into the chat feature. Chalice lighting is by Jennifer Leota Gray. We come together every week, bound not by creed or a mutual desire to please one God or many gods. Yet we are drawn together by a belief that how we are in the world, Who we are together matters. We light this chalice together in the knowledge that love, not fear, can change this world. Please join me in the affirmation found in your order of service and in the chat, and join me during the italicized words. We belong to the earth by Chief Noah Self. This we know, the earth does not belong to us. We belong to the earth. This we know, all things are connected like the blood which unites one family. All things are connected. Whatever befalls the earth befalls the sons and daughters of the earth. We did not weave the web of life. We are merely a strand in it. Whatever we do to the web, we do to ourselves. Let us join together in singing the opening hymn. If you'd like, type "singing together" in the chat.
Our church is supported by those who call our church home and by those who support the efforts of our church to change our world for the better. We share our cash plate every Sunday with organizations whose work reflects UU values to care for marginalized persons, advocate for real and systemic change, defend our environment, and promote justice and equity for all. This month's Share the Plate recipient is Alabama Interfaith Refugee Partnership, an organization dedicated to caring for refugees in Birmingham and educating the public on refugee issues. During this time of social distancing and online worship, please know that our church expenses continue. Therefore, we very much appreciate your continuing to pay your pledge or offer your donation by either mailing a check to the church office or by using PayPal or Venmo. Our Venmo account is at UUCBHAM. Please designate whether your offering is for UUCB or Alabama Interfaith Refugee Partnership. Thank you for your generous support of our church and our Share the Plate recipient. May we give in hope and in love.
using the chat feature in YouTube, by speaking aloud, or hearing it in your heart. Please give voice to what is on your heart today. Please take a moment to hear a spoken meditation followed by a moment of silence. Loving kindness meditation. May I be well, safe, and peaceful. May I be free from the suffering of fear, anger, and ill will. May I find forgiveness for the harm we bring to one another. May I cultivate loving kindness, compassion, and joy. May I live in peace and harmony with all beings. May you be well, safe, and peaceful. May you be free from the suffering of fear, anger, and ill will. May you find forgiveness for the harm we bring to one another. May you cultivate loving kindness, compassion, and joy. May you live in peace and harmony with all beings. May we be well, safe, and peaceful. May we be free from the suffering of fear, anger, and ill will. May we find forgiveness for the harm we bring to one another. May we cultivate loving kindness, compassion, and joy. May we live in peace and harmony with all beings. May all be well, safe, and peaceful. May all be free from the suffering of fear, anger, and ill will. May all find forgiveness for the harm we bring to one another. May all cultivate loving kindness, compassion, and joy. May all live in peace and harmony with all beings. Amen, and blessed be. Let us join together in singing the hymn found in your order of service, and if you'd like, type "singing together" in the chat.
We would be one as now we join in singing our hymn of love to pledge ourselves anew to that high cause of greater understanding.
Will the children please come forward? Hi, everyone. I'm so glad that you could be here today because I need your help with something. I was reading this story today and I want to share it with you and get your opinion on some things. Once upon a time, there was a village, and the people in the village were very busy. Some were collecting food, some were making blankets, some were preparing meals. One day, one of the villagers looked up and saw a baby floating down the river. He looked all around to see, did anybody else see this baby floating down the river? He shouted out to the other villagers, "There's a baby in the river. Have you seen this before?" The villagers said, "Oh, I may have seen something, but I was too busy to do anything about it." Well, now that this villager had brought the attention of the other villagers to the baby in the river, they quickly got together to save the babies. They set up a zip line with baskets to fish the babies out of the river as quickly as possible. But it seemed that for every baby that they took out of the river, there were 3 more coming down the stream. So they started an assembly line and they worked to save the babies, and they grew more food to feed the babies, and they made more blankets to keep the babies warm. It was getting very exhausting, but they figured that it was important enough that they all just keep on saving the babies. Then one day, one of the villagers said, "Wonder where all these babies are coming from. Maybe it would be a good idea if we went up the river to find out where they're all coming from." Some of the villagers agreed that would be a good idea, but other villagers were against it. They thought, if a lot of people go up the river to find out where these babies are coming from, who will stay behind and feed the babies? Who will make the blankets and harvest the fields? And who will fish the babies out of the water? These are all good questions. So my problem today that I would like your help with is, what do you think the villagers should do? Should they stay and take care of the babies? Should they go up the river and see where the babies are coming from? Or maybe there's a third solution. I would love to hear all your ideas. So this week, if you would record your ideas and send them to Miss Nicole, our DRE, we are going to share some of those next week with the congregation. So really think about it. What would you do? Thank you, and let's sing our song.
And now let's sing our principal song together. One, each person is worthwhile, to be kind in all you do. 3, we help each other learn. 4, and search for what is true. 5, all people get a vote. 6, build a just and peaceful world. 7, we take care of the earth. That will bring us back to me and you too.
My name is Karen Hutt. I am a minister with First Universalist, and I have never been so proud to be a UU. It's been 25 years this year for me in ministry, and I am grateful to be with all of you. I was born with a heart defect. Doctors were uncertain if they could do such a risky surgery, and a very costly surgery on this little colored girl in 1959. They debated, my parents challenged the hospital, and 2 years later, my life was saved through the surgery. But following my surgery, it was in a largely African-American hospital. They moved that procedure out of the city, making it really inaccessible for Black families. There's no justice. There is no peace. When I was a kid, my great-grandfather, who was born just after the Emancipation Proclamation, told me about his mother who had been enslaved. His mom was a seamstress who freed herself. She needed work, and she got a job sewing Confederate flags during the Civil War. She used the money to buy her relatives out of slavery. Her husband, though, we learned very little about, was murdered by white children for fun. The story goes that they took out his eyeballs for marbles. There is no justice. There is no peace. When I was a kid, my grandfather told me about how proud he was to be a soldier during World War I. He loved the uniform because the women in France thought that he was just the most handsome Negro ever. When he and his best friends came home from the war to Delaware, Maryland area, they were chased by a gang of white men. They caught my pup-pup's friend and lynched him. The pup-pup hid in some debris until it was safe to escape. At the lynching, hundreds of white adults and children took pictures with his friend's charred body, smiling. And then chunks of his body was distributed to the many that sought them to put in what was called a nigger jar. There was no justice, and there was no peace. When I was a teenager, I was a popular, mischievous, smart-aleck kid who took lots of risks with the boys. We sat on the chains between the subway cars in Philadelphia, sitting on them while the train was moving 80 miles an hour underground. We jumped on the back of public city buses and held onto the ledge to ride to the next stop. We asked adults to buy us Boone's Farm apple wine at the state store. And the cops would always come on these incidents, and I couldn't run very fast, so I always hid underneath the cars. All the boys were eventually arrested or beaten, at least once by the police in their early years, and many, many, many went to juvie. There is no justice. There is no peace. When I was a young adult, I took a boat to work on an island in the Boston Harbor with black and white kids from South Boston High School. We were teaching them leadership skills using the ropes course and environmental science as a metaphor so they could go back into their school during the height of racial violence during the busing crisis in Boston in the early 80s. One day, I had to take the late boat back to Dorchester Bay and walk a mile to the Red Line train station. On the way, I was jumped by a gang of whites. I was left semi-conscious on the ground after a brief but painful encounter. There is no justice, and there is no peace. When I was 30, in my 30s, I moved to Chicago, the most segregated city in America. One day I was driving and was pulled over by the police. One day I was driving and pulled over by the police. One day I was driving and pulled over by the police, but a matter of 15 times in 1 year. I was ticketed, harassed, disrespected. There's no justice. There's no peace. When I was in my 40s, I worked at a maximum security prison with thousands of black men, piled like sardines, 7 floors high. I watched guards step on the heads of these men and then drag them down concrete staircases in races on either side of the tier for entertainment. There was no justice and there was no peace. Now, in my 60s, I see my country much the way I see this so-called president, both behaving like insolent children, a ravenous toddler, unable and uninterested in controlling or mitigating raw, historical, racist impulses to conquer and destroy Black life. These eruptions against our humanity can happen at any time and at any place because anti-Blackness and white supremacy are the bedrock of this nation. The slightest tremor can shake the ground beneath our feet And then that foot of gleeful control steps on our collective necks. This country who hears my pain as white noise, who sees my blood as inconvenient puddles to step over. This country has weathered my black body with stress and illness. This country whose structures and machinery of injustice continue to create new ways to separate my head from my body. You see, America loves our black bodies. To throw a ball on a field, to dunk a hoop, to labor in the industries of capital, for sexual fantasies, and the provision of entertainment. But our black heads, not so much. Our heads that create black towns after slavery, our heads that innovate and invent, our heads that do complex math, our heads that write novels, our heads who create music and smile and joke with generativity despite the terror, our heads that have figured out how to survive and how to take care of ourselves, our dignified heads that are held high, and most of all, our heads that speak truth to power. For the American anti-Black movement, it is that head of George Floyd, his head with kinky hair, his head with a broad African nose, his head with beautiful full lips, his head with dark brown skin. It is that head that the anti-Black agenda seeks to sever from its body. So white supremacy can feed. You must cut off that head so it can feed on him like zombies feed on brains. The killer cop that kneeled on George Floyd's neck lingered with childish glee. Look at his face. And he's lingering with institutional sanction, thinking that this was okay, that this was acceptable to do. He looks bewildered at all the fuss as he casually keeps his hand in his pocket, just passing the time on a black man's neck. After all, George was not human. You could not hear the pleas of a non-human. You could not respond to the life being sucked out of a non-human. You can kill him to obliterate breathing blackness, speaking blackness, thinking blackness. The machine of white supremacy is so well oiled not to see or to hear or to feel. It is a cold and calculating gadget with one singular laser-focused objective: to kill me in the most comprehensive and thorough manner. Slowly through policy and infrastructure, or suddenly through the deprivation of oxygen. This machine, with its intricate screws ground into my ancestral body, this machine that has robbed Black people of our liberty and who profited by this theft every hour that we live, have no moral ground on which to stand. It is the humiliated, incarcerated, mutilated, and terrorized Black body that serves as the vestibule for this democratic republic. I love this country. And all my life, I have heard that it's going to take time for America to change. I believed it, and I worked for it. But I have a message to my own childish aspirations today from the Me Too movement. And that message is, time's up. How much time does it take to see us as human? How much time does it take for our pleas to be heard? You know, there's a great relief in saying time's up. It means that something else is going to happen. It means the end of something. It means, now what? What it doesn't mean is hope for something better. It means actions for something better. We are witnessing a shocking accumulation of injured and mutilated Black bodies, particularly young Black bodies. Our Unitarian, Universalist, liberal, and progressive white communities need to ask themselves this question. If our movement is truly progressing towards this, quote, society that is to come, maybe, if we're really moving towards that, why is suffering increasing at such an alarming rate? In response to this inquiry, are you telling your Black siblings that they remain hopeful, keep struggling, keep hope alive, keep faith? I have come to the conclusion that hope is a deadly aspiration for Black people. When we hope, we are still. Hope is a naive conundrum that doesn't inspire action. Being hopeful comes from a place of lack and scarcity. Hope causes us to wait for things to happen to us rather than going out and creating those things for ourselves. While we hope, we continue to suffer. America depends on Black people to wait and hope and pray so white supremacy can continue maintaining and adding to our suffering. My great-grandfather hoped, and he and my family taught that during the uprisings, taught me during the uprisings in 1968, that the political arithmetic of this country wants us to hope while it's saturated with violence. It was founded on looting in the Boston Harbor. It looted the land of the native folks. It looted the shores of Africa that brought me here. It looted the environment. It looted Black communities from their wealth. Thus, nonviolence is a misnomer or somewhat of a ruse. Hope is a Black sacrifice. It is a violence directed towards the self, and it is useless. Political hope has usurped the spiritual principle of hope and puts it in the service of extending oppression. The political hope is bound up with metaphysical violence, and this violence masquerades as a solution to the problem of anti-Blackness. This hopeful, temporal, linear perfection is connected to the tropes of betterment, struggle, work, and utopian multicultural futures. These conceptual instruments of political hope will never obviate Black suffering or anti-Black violence. These concepts only serve to reproduce the conditions that render our existence unbearable. Political theologians and optimists avoid the immediacy of Black suffering, the horror of anti-Black pulverization, and paint pictures of the, quote, not yet but is, maybe to come soon, maybe the social order will be. Political hope becomes a vicious and abusive cycle of struggle. It's like putting a circle around an idea or an object. The idea might be Black freedom. It might be reparations. It might be justice or relief or reprieve or redress or equality. Putting a circle around it and then making it inaccessible because it doesn't really exist. Those with political hope propose a collective enjoyment as an answer to Black suffering. They point to finding the joy in the struggle, the victory in the toil, and the satisfaction of symbolic action and the singing of songs from enslavement. How repulsive is it that in our very own hymnal, there is a song, "No More Auction Block for Me," white UUs singing about toil and struggle as Black youth are slaughtered daily. Black bodies are incarcerated as forms of capital. Black infant mortality rates are soaring, and hunger is disabling the bodies, minds, and spirits of desperate Black youth. These conditions are deep problems, and singing spirituals does not address the terrifying fact that the world depends on Black death to sustain white life. They depended on my ancestors' death, but I'm here to say time's up again. I'm here to say it for Richard Johnson, my great-grandfather, who said at the end of slavery was just a coffee break. And he went on to create numerous black businesses, employed much of his community in good jobs. Time's up for Walter Grooms, my pop-up, who, like other black soldiers, was a war runner across the battlefield who took messages from one battalion to another across explosive areas. He came home to be a union organizer at the Navy Yard. Time's up for Shirley Grooms, my mother, a social worker, and George Hutt, my father, an engineer and politician, who risked everything. They risked everything walking me one day across a racial barrier to enroll me into an all-white school that had the resources they believed I need for my education. My ancestors did not hope and wait. They acted and organized. Friends, go down and try for a day to see what it's like to let go of political hope. Just let it go. Imagine the creation of a spiritual, human, life-centered, life-giving hope that's rooted in the reality of the world we have now, not the one we dream of. Imagine the creation of a spiritual, human, life-centered, life-giving hope that will be built with the black and white ashes that have been left on Lake Street. Imagine. Blessed be. Amen and Ashe.
Please join us in our closing hymn found in your order of service. Daring Vision by Reverend Maureen Killoran. We extinguish this chalice flame, daring to carry forward the vision of this free faith, that freedom, reason, and justice will one day prevail in this nation and across the earth.